Welcome to The Nation on Bernama TV. I'm Pasha Rahim. Right now, just across town, some of the region's top tech minds, policymakers and industry leaders are gathered for the ASEAN Semiconductor Summit. And we are bringing you this special broadcast as part of our continuing coverage. It's a major moment, not just for Malaysia, but for the whole region. We're talking about semiconductors, these small, powerful components that quietly run almost every device in your life. If you've used your phone today, checked your laptop, maybe turned on your car, there's a good chance a semiconductor was behind it. Now, semiconductors are made from materials like silicon that can control electricity, and when shaped into chips, they become the brains of modern technology. What's Malaysia's role in all this? It's bigger than most people realize. We currently handle about 13% of the world's back-end chip operations, and that includes testing, assembly and packaging. And major players, Intel, Infineon, Micron, are already here. But now, Malaysia's aiming higher. Through National Semiconductor Strategy, we're looking to climb up the value chain, moving into chip design. We're talking about research and advanced manufacturing. Now, this is all part of a much bigger regional push as well. ASEAN, with its strategic location and neutrality, is positioning itself as the next global semiconductor hub. So over the next half hour, we're diving into where Malaysia stands in this race, what's at stake, and what still needs to be done. I'll be speaking with KORBOUT, Sport Procurement Manager at Basementality Sendirian Berhad, and CALLUM CHEN, Honorary President of the Malaysian Consortium of Mid-Tier Companies, or also known as the MCMTC, to get their perspectives on whether Malaysia can lead the semiconductor charge in Asia. Let's find out. But before that, let's begin with some updates. Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim will announce new measures at the ASEAN Semiconductor Summit to keep Malaysia's chip industry competitive. It marks 1 year since the launch of the National Semiconductor Strategy. The government is focusing on long-term, data-driven policies and local industry support. Malaysia aims to develop 110 high-value local companies in the semiconductor space. It's been a little more than a year ago when this was reported. Now, the plan was and still is to train 60,000 engineers. It was announced as part of Malaysia's National Semiconductor Strategy, or also known as the NSS. The projected investment was 35 billion ringgit, and it was officially launched on May 28, 2024 by Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. Earlier, we talked about PMX's aspirations, and here's what Tengku Zafrul had to say. He says ASEAN has a real chance to lead the global chip industry, not just because demand is rising, but because we're seen as neutral in the US-China tech rivalry. He's confident SMIS will strengthen public-private cooperation and help push the region forward. In a Financial Times interview on February 25, 2024, Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim criticized China-phobia in the West and emphasized Malaysia's neutral stance, saying the region can benefit from both US and Chinese firms without picking a quarrel. Next, Investment, Trade and Industry Minister, Deputy Minister Liew Chin Tong, said Malaysia is ready to collaborate with ASEAN partners and beyond through joint investments, research partnerships and knowledge sharing to turn regional ambitions into reality. Now, speaking at the ASEAN Semiconductor Summit 2025 today, Liew stated that ASEAN's strength lies in unity, underpinned by its strategic location, vibrant workforce, strong innovation and manufacturing capabilities, and a growing digital economy. Liew said that as Malaysia chairs ASEAN this year, one of its key priority economic deliverables, or the PEDs, is the development of an ASEAN framework for an integrated semiconductor supply chain, which is targeted for completion before Malaysia hands over the chairmanship. Just a few days ago in Sarawak, SMD Semiconductor held a major workshop, the Sarawak Semiconductor Syndication Session, and they brought together ministries, universities and industry players to shape the state's chip strategy. It follows the launch of Sarawak's own semiconductor roadmap back in April. Their aim to turn Sarawak into the silicon nerve center of Asia by 2030. The outcomes will soon be presented to Premier Abang Johari. They'll probably be hear something about that today too. And just last week, Deputy Prime Minister Fadillah Yusof announced a 90 million ringgit matching fund to push Malaysia further into advanced chip packaging, an area that's mostly dominated by countries like Taiwan. He called it more than just funding. It is a call to local industry to step up, do bold research, and help move Malaysia up the global semiconductor chain. Fadillah also reminded us Malaysia's just climbed 11 spots to 23rd in the global competitiveness rankings. He says now's the time to shift from made in Malaysia to made by Malaysia. Still on the semiconductor news front, earlier this month, Penang landed another major semiconductor investment. SuperSiC Malaysia, part of China's Zhejiang Jingsheng, broke ground on a new silicon carbide water plant capable of producing 240,000 wafers a year. It's a game changer. Penang's mature chip ecosystem, abundant talent and strategic location make it ideal for high-tech facilities like this one. This facility also plugs a vital gap in Malaysia's semiconductor landscape. Advanced wafer fabrication, a key pillar in the national semiconductor strategy. Now, by making this part of the chip at home, Malaysia moves one step closer to building the whole thing ourselves and keeping more jobs and investment right here in Malaysia. Now, India is also looking to deepen its tech ties with Malaysia. India's High Commissioner B.N. Reddy was here with us on The Nation recently, and he made it clear there's strong interest in building joint ventures with Malaysian companies, especially in the semiconductor sector. India is investing heavily in its own chip industry through what's called the India Semiconductor Mission, and they see Malaysia as a reliable partner with experience, infrastructure, and a mature ecosystem already in place. He also spoke about cross-border digital payments and how both countries are exploring QR code integration so that eventually Indian tourists could pay in Malaysia the same way they do at home and vice versa. The UK's new High Commissioner Ajay Sharma says working with Malaysia on semiconductors is a top priority. Speaking to us on The Nation, he said Malaysia is already involved in different parts of the value chain and we can complement and learn from each other. He also highlighted Sarawak's SMD Semiconductor, which has opened a chip facility in Wales, and talked about partnering on education, clean energy and making trade under CPTPP smoother for businesses.
So we have a Malaysian investment into new compound semiconductors in Wales, and I really want to work with Malaysia on the semiconductor industry, because Malaysia is already involved, and we are involved in different aspects of it, and together we complement each other and we can learn from each other.
And just over a week ago in Bintulu, Sarawak hit a major milestone in the chip race. OCI Tokuyama Semiconductor Materials, a joint venture from South Korea and Japan, is investing 2 billion ringgit to build a polysilicon plant, the first of its kind outside Japan and Korea, right in Samalaju Industrial Park. Premier Abang Johari says this proves that global tech players trust Sarawak's stability, infrastructure and green energy push. The plant will make high-purity polysilicon a critical material for semiconductors used in everything from phones and EVs to AI and data centers. This is part of Sarawak's bigger plan to become a regional technology hub backed by clean hydropower and a state-funded commitment to grow local talent, including free university education for Sarawakians in tech fields. I'm off to a quick break. When we return, KORBOUT, Sport Procurement Manager at Basementality Sendiran Berhad, joins me to share his thoughts on this question. Can Malaysia lead the semiconductor charge in Asia? Stay with us.
Malaysia, a nation of promise and progress, proudly steps into the ASEAN Chairmanship in 2025. A decade ago, we held the chair as the ASEAN community was born in Kuala Lumpur. And now, Malaysia is once again ready to drive progress and empower the people of Southeast Asia. ASEAN is now more than an association of nations. It is a symphony of shared dreams, a chorus of hopes intertwined. It breathes with the rhythm of unity, with a vision that lights the path to a brighter tomorrow. Together we have forged a path towards peace, stability, and prosperity. Through the trials and triumphs, ASEAN has grown even stronger. Today, we stand as an economic powerhouse, poised to become the world's fourth largest economy. Our resilience is unshakable, our resolve unwavering. In 2025, we will forge ahead, bold, confident, and unyielding. This is ASEAN's moment to shine. As chair, Malaysia will embrace the future with a clear vision. We will champion inclusivity, creating a region where every voice soars and no one is left behind. We will drive sustainability in all we do, securing the long-term well-being of our people. Together, we will build a future where everyone can thrive.
ASEAN is a community of nations, of shared dreams, an excellent example of how neighbors can sit down and work together for the betterment of our people.
In 2025, under the guiding light of the ASEAN Community Vision 2045, a new chapter will begin. This marks the start of a 20-year journey, a journey where we rise not as separate nations, but as one. One community, bound by progress, peace, and purpose. One vision, driven by the promise of a greater future for generations to come. Together, we will shape a future of shared peace, stability, and prosperity where our unity drives us forward and our legacy endures. Welcome to where it all begins anew.
Selamat datang, welcome to Malaysia.
Ayo seluruh anak berdiri, bangunkan Malaysia madani, sepenuh hati, jiwa, semangat, terus meyakini Malaysia madani. Ayo seluruh anak berdiri, semarakkan Malaysia madani, sepenuh hati, jiwa, semangat, terus meyakini.
Hi, welcome back. You're watching The Nation exclusively on Bernama TV. Now, joining me in studio is KORBOUT, the Sport Procurement Manager at Basementality Sendirian Berhad, and he's here with us to share his insights on Malaysia's role in Asia's growing semiconductor landscape and whether the country, whether we have what it takes to lead the charge. Now, KIRILL, thank you so much for joining us today. Let's jump straight into the conversation, right? So Malaysia has long played a back role, when we're talking about the global semiconductor supply chain. We've been involved in testing, assembly, packing, packaging. What does it really take for Malaysia to now move up that value chain if we're talking about going into design and innovation and also, taking on higher value roles?
Yeah, it's a great question, and yeah, thanks for having me. You see, Malaysia has had a very central role throughout the years in the business, right. And the central location of Malaysia is one of the beneficial factors for this country, right? So, however, we cannot always just rely on the legacy reputation from the past, because we see a lot of competitiveness from the ASEAN region at the moment. We see Vietnam, they're really gearing up their manufacturing. Thailand, they're also making strategic alliances. As you can see in the summit as well, there are other players that are very aggressive. Singapore has been the dominant R&D center and a design center in the region. Right. And you have to look back and see, how is Malaysia going to differentiate itself? What's going to be, are we competing on the same terms, or are we trying to be different? When we're saying that, this is not like a party, that ASEAN comes together and we're all going to play along. Like some of the ministers were saying, at the end of the day, we have to take our national interest as a first priority. So therefore, you see, everyone's actually competing, but we say, how can we compete together? But we should not outcompete each other. So Malaysia has to pick a lane. How are we going to differentiate ourselves? How are we going to do things better than the other countries that are surrounding us? And using the kind of the legacy past or the history that we've had in this field, how do we move forward? To me, it all boils down to one simple thing: talent. If you have companies here in Malaysia that are investing in the country, they are opening up plants, you know, they're officiating the plants as we speak, but where do they come from? It is R&D centers in other countries, for example, and they only do packaging, assembly and all that in, let's say, Penang. And then they ship it out to somewhere else. That means they get tax-free cuts, and that's about it. So how are we going to involve the Malaysian industry in terms of talent, where we can design, we can do the R&D, we can have our own companies that do this. So it comes down to the agenda. What kind of framework does the government actually want to put forth for the next coming, let's say, 5 to 10 to maybe 15 years? Because it starts at the end of the day from science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM, which produces students that then go into these university institutions, then jump over into the industry, academia, and then work together in an ecosystem that then makes the industry thrive. And so far we can see that, you know, it's a challenging situation now because there's a lot of uncertainty. So for Malaysia to stand out, I think we really have to choose the path forward.
KIRILL, now let's try and get a different perspective, right, on Malaysia's role in the semiconductor industry. And we did earlier speak to Dr. Carl Lee Chi Leong, who's a senior lecturer at the Institute of China Studies from University of Malaya. And we asked him how he would describe Malaysia's current standing in the global semiconductor supply chain. Now, this is his response.
So when we talk about the global semiconductor supply chain, it basically consists of three core streams. Upstream, the IC design; the midstream, the chip making or fabrication, what we call it; and then the downstream, the packaging and testing. Okay, or even in Malaysia we also call it the assembly, but basically it's packaging and testing within the downstream. So at this moment, Malaysia excels in this particular downstream, and which is the packaging and testing. But there's a room for us, for Malaysia to grow, because we are not in the advanced packaging and testing, let's say, subsector within this downstream level of packaging and testing.
Right. So early on, you mentioned about, you know, how while we are collaborating with other countries in the ASEAN, but we are also at the same time competing with them. Now, there is a lot of talk about regional collaboration. Now, ASEAN aligning its semiconductor goals, how is Malaysia doing enough to stand out and to position itself as a key player in the region? Because we are competing with Singapore, for example.
Yes, it's an excellent question, I believe, because you see, traditionally, you'll have to look at the infrastructure that's already available in the country vis-a-vis the ones that are being invested in, where the plants are still growing and they're, let's say, brand new or whatnot. So we have to look and see how has the infrastructure from the previous generations helped Malaysia to have a competitive edge. So let's say, for example, in Penang, there's a big sector. There's a huge chunk of the companies there are gearing, or they're basically working towards this sector, right? So for any new investments to come, they also have to see what is going to be the differentiator and what kind of aspect they can leapfrog other companies in. So if you look at, take a step back, right? And we look at the fact that not the market, the buyer's market is not in the ASEAN. Most of the chips that are being manufactured are not sold here in the region, right? So they're being exported to, let's say, for example, China, the US, Europe and whatnot. So you have to see what kind of chips are there. Right now, the buzzword is AI chips, NVIDIA, first $4 trillion US company in the world, right? And they were not there 5 years ago. So the industry tends to shift very quickly. So you have to see how well will Malaysia guess where we need to go. So for example, automotive sector. We see now the automotive sector is changing rapidly from US and Europe-based manufacturing to now China. China is now coming up with their own semiconductor industry, right? Where they're having these trade tariffs as something that kind of slows them down, but instead what they're doing is going back and starting to develop their own chips. So now we have to see in 5 to 10 years, do we still have the client base? Are we still selling the chips to the same places? Or do we need to rethink and find a way, and I think during this symposium, they're talking about the fact that we can actually collaborate and create our own markets, domestic markets, and markets that are not necessarily aligned to where it is today, but where it will be. So for example, looking at India, China, Southeast Asia as a market itself, and maybe even position ourselves to go in strongly after that market and not try to compete for what is available or on the market right now. So I think Malaysia is not, well, we have better logistics, that's for sure. I think the fact that we are educated in English most of the time, especially in universities and when it comes to this field specifically, it's better that we have this, but we have to ask ourselves, is that talent staying in Malaysia and taking up Malaysian jobs, or are they then leaving to other countries and then doing the R&D and the research and the chip design and then get it manufactured in Malaysia? So we maybe have Malaysians working on these chip designs, but not for Malaysian companies, not in Malaysia. How do we bring them back? So I think it's a big role for the government to come in and say, look, we have to create the framework. We have to create the ecosystem for SMEs, big corporations, and also the labor sector, even import the labor sector or the educators, the people going to train the next generation, and see, look, we're not expecting results in 1 year. This is going to be a long-term plan. And we have advantages that I think are quite unique in the region, and Malaysia has to play to its strengths. So we cannot be cautious, we cannot nibble, we have to bite, and we have to bite hard.
Right. Well, as we speak, the ASEAN Semiconductor Summit is going on at the KL Convention Center, and we will be taking you there right now, as Tengku Zafrul is expected to be making his big speech anytime right now. So we're gonna speak for a little bit more, but at any moment I might have to cut you off, and we need to go to KL Convention Center. But speaking about talent, earlier, KIRILL, you did mention that we need to have a big emphasis on that, and Malaysia's national semiconductor strategy also places a big emphasis on talent. So from your experience in business development and also workforce scaling, are we prepared yet to meet that demand?
Yeah, good question again. The world is changing very rapidly. So if you were to go into a college and say, like, look, in 5 years I want to graduate as a master's degree holder in this particular field, by the time you graduate, the train has already left. You know, there are no more jobs for you. And when you say that there's a hot sector right now, you still have to wait for quite a while before you can produce the workforce that is going to be adjacent with the need. So the demand is there. There's no question of the fact that demand is there, but the supply maybe not always there. Why? From my experience, that we see that the companies can be aggressive, they can come in, they have the right framework, they have the right policies and everything in place, and when they want to hire, there's just not enough people to fill in the gaps that would enable this kind of manufacturing or design or R&D. So we're looking at maybe importing, at least as a short-term strategy, but then you have to have immigration laws that can complement. So for example, you have the MSc status companies that are able to import workforce labor and to kind of smooth out the shortages in the workforce. But eventually we would have to produce our own, and we have to make sure that there's not a brain drain. So when the graduates come in, like we saw with the doctors, for example, if they're being asked for a higher salary in Singapore, what will make them stay? Is it loyalty to the country? Is it, are they part of this bigger picture that we're building Malaysia together for a better future for all of the country, right? Not just like, I'm going to leave for my own sake. So we have to have the long-term strategy and the plan, and we have to have the patience to implement it.